Last month, I put my very first book, my ebook, The Glimmer Princess, up for sale on Amazon and other retailers. I did a pre-sale campaign and I had a release day, and I wanted to share with you how it all went. So I wanted to chat about my thoughts, how I felt it went, what I would do differently next time, and just give you kind of behind the scenes. So that way, if you're planning your very first ebook launch or book launch, you can learn a little bit. Maybe you do things completely different than me. That's okay. I just wanted to share so you get my perspective and you can decide from there what you'll do for your ebook launch. So let's chat about it. The first thing that I wanted to share with you is that I did purchase this little notebook from Shutterfly, thanks to Bethany Atazada and Brittany Wang. They both have spoken either in videos or on Instagram about journals that they purchased from Shutterfly that had their cover on the front. And for me, I decided that this would be a great purchase for myself during the launch so I could take notes. I kind of gave it to myself as a gift for launching, but also I wanted something that I could record my thoughts in as a newly published author. So this is what I'm using to kind of write down any notes whenever I do anything new with my book. So that's the first thing that I wanted to say, is that I did purchase this and I kept some notes during my launch and my pre-sales campaign. Let's chat about, should you have a pre-order or pre-sales campaign? I personally like the idea of having a pre-sale or pre-order because it allows me to do things without feeling the stress of it needing to be done right away. I did a 1-month pre-sale campaign because I felt that was enough time for me to do all of the finishing touches and get everything ready in order to launch. So I was able to start talking about my book and start getting sales, but I didn't have to have the final file ready for the people who purchased until a couple of days beforehand. So with Amazon, you can upload your file, I think they say 2 days or 3 days ahead of time. I did a lot sooner than that. I think I did it maybe like 10 days before. So for me, that gave me the opportunity to have like 2 weeks at the beginning where I could get things in order. So you do have to upload it before the actual day that it releases, but I did upload it a lot sooner because I would be anxious if I waited until the last minute. That is the first thing, is I really wanted to have that additional time to be able to upload everything and to look things over more. I had a couple of chapters that I wanted to edit with my editor. And when I actually started the pre-sale campaign, my editor had my book and she was working on it. She was like at the tail end of working on it, but I knew I could start talking about it while it was in her hands, start kind of sharing, start actually getting sales. I could do all of those things during this pre-sale campaign. The other thing I could do was figure out, just kind of get my head on straight with what I actually wanted to do to talk about my book on social media. The one thing that you might really want to consider when you're doing any kind of sales, any kind of marketing, is you have to consider where your audience is online. So for me, I have Instagram. I have a very small channel here on YouTube. I have a very small email list at this moment in time. And I have Facebook, where I have friends, family, and then I also have a very small Facebook page. So I took into consideration all of these different outlets, all of these different social channels that I have that I could talk about my book, because that's where my sales are going to come from in the beginning. And that's where your sales will come from in the beginning. The different people that you know, that's where it's going to come from until people start searching for and finding your book. And when they search for and find your book, that is dependent on your keywords. It's dependent on, how well your book is ranking and different things like that. So this being my first book, I couldn't rely only on that. I needed to use these social channels to bring people in to purchase. So I needed to think about, what do I have available to me as far as an audience goes, as far as my readership goes. It's not very big because this is my first book. So I decided that I would just strictly use social media to talk to my audience and to try to gain sales, because that's what I have. So that's something that you'll want to take into consideration. The other thing that you'll want to consider when you're doing your pre-sale campaign is when you want to start, when you want to end, and the different things that you're going to do throughout. And having a month-long period for me to be able to think about it and try things out and do whatever, like that was really nice for me to kind of have it a little more chill, I guess, where I didn't feel stressed like I had to do everything in a week. I had an entire month to kind of gear up and plan for my entire pre-sale campaign, for my entire launch day. I was able to think about things throughout the entire month and act on the things that I wanted to do. Some of it was just me learning what are the available options. Some of it was just me thinking about what do I want to post on Instagram during launch week. Some of it was just me getting ready. All of this to say, I felt like having a month was an adequate amount of time for me to do the things that I needed to do and not feel stressed. That is something that I learned in my other business, where I actually never gave myself enough time to prepare. And I quickly burnt out from doing sales and from doing launches. So I was launching other things. I wasn't launching a book. I wasn't launching anything with author services or anything like that. It was all related to services and courses that I created. And I just quickly burnt myself out. And I don't want this author career of mine to feel where I'm burning myself out and to feel like it's making me anxious or worry or whatever. I wanted it to be exciting, but chill and peaceful. So I kept that in mind. So for your campaign, you'll want to keep in mind how much time that you need in order to get everything done. So you'll want to select your start date and your end date and make sure that you give yourself enough time to get that file ready, to get that file up on Amazon, where you're doing it plenty ahead of time and not stressing about it. So that's number one that I wanted to talk about. Another benefit of doing a pre-sale or pre-order campaign is that I had something concrete. So whenever you don't have a pre-sale or pre-order, you may just choose a day and then you might just keep putting it off because you just don't feel ready. But for me, doing the pre-sale or pre-order campaign gave me a concrete date where I was looking forward to that date. I knew that date was the day that it was happening, period. I was not like able to, once I chose it, once I put it into Amazon, I was not able to change that, because if I did, then I would get penalized. I would get penalized by Amazon, where they say that you cannot do another pre-order campaign for a year. So once I actually put it into Amazon and actually made it where it went live, that is when I could not push back the date any longer. Now, before that, I could make a draft on Amazon and I could push it back and push it back and push it back. But once I hit that button to make it live, a live pre-sale campaign, there was no turning back. So I had something concrete to look forward to, a date where I knew when everything was going to happen. So that to me is a really good thing rather than just like one day all of a sudden like, oh, now my book is available. I actually knew when it would be available. And I could also tell my readers, my book is available or will be available on such and such date. And that to me kind of makes it so much easier to talk about your book because you know when you are going to have that end date. So that was a definite benefit for me for doing a pre-sale. Next, I want to chat about what I did during my pre-sale campaign. So I didn't do a huge list of things because I already had a lot of stuff done. I was just tying up those last minute things and trying to get to the point where I was really ready for this book to come out. So, what I did during the campaign, first of all, I got the listing ready for Amazon, and I also got the listing ready for draft to digital. So those are things that I had worked on months and months before. The blurb on Amazon, that is something that I worked on through school, and I had worked on it for a really long time. But that's something that you'll want to have ready. The listing itself, I just used the blurb that I wrote for school and I edited through school. I tried to figure out the pricing of what I would price the book. I did all of those things like that kind of prior, and I had already had most of that done before I actually went in and hit the button to make it live. I did not have my file in Amazon yet, and as well on and also on draft to digital, I didn't have my file where it was like readily available, and that one I didn't publish until a week ahead of time because I was doing most of my pre-sales and pre-order through Amazon. So that was one of the main things that I did was just finish that up, get that ready, make sure it was ready to go. Now, is it perfect? No. There are things that I will probably change in the future and things that I will want to make better and everything. But at the beginning, you just want to do the best you can and get that listing ready to go. So that was number one. Number two was the file, getting that ready and making sure that I could put it on Amazon. So I made it through Adobe InDesign, which may not be for everyone. I think it's a little complicated, actually. I had used InDesign in the past and I knew how to use it, but there were things that I had, like some kind of road bumps along the way that I had to fix and kind of figure out because they were things that were going wrong with the file. And I still actually have some issues with the file. Whenever I go to Amazon, there's some weird things going on when you do the preview that I didn't know because I couldn't see that preview. But when you actually look at it in Kindle or you look at it on Scribd or wherever, the file looks fine. There's some little things here and there that could be better, sure. But overall, I had to get that ready and I needed to make sure that it was the best that it could be being my first ebook, right? So that was one of the things that I did. Another thing that I did was I made a schedule for launch week. So I sat down and figured out what I was going to do, what I was going to post, and where during launch week. So that was primarily me figuring out what I was going to post on Instagram, and that's about it. I also set myself a sales goal. This is something that you may not think to do, but for me, it gave me a concrete idea, a concrete number of what I wanted to sell. And so I kept it actually kind of low, maybe for anyone. I don't know, because I don't know what most people hope to sell when they first launch a book and they don't have a large readership yet. So for me, I set a very low sales goal of 20. And then I had a medium goal and a high goal. I will tell you that I did surpass my low goal, not by too much, but enough that I felt that I had succeeded. And honestly, if just one person read my book, I would be happy. But I did surpass that goal. So I made that goal to give me something to work towards. And I think it's a great thing to do to help yourself to figure out how many sales that you want to make during your pre-launch and then also on release day. I actually didn't set a goal for release day, which I think is something that I would change next time. I'm not going to talk about that just yet, what I'm going to change for next time, but I do know that that was one thing that I would change in the future. Another big thing that I did was I created graphics, or I made photos or got things ready for my website, for Instagram, for Facebook, Twitter, wherever I was going to talk about my book. I wanted to have images or graphics that I could use to share. So that's something that I did ahead of time as well. I didn't do it necessarily, at the very beginning of my pre-sale campaign. I did it during the campaign. So I used the time to figure out what changes I needed to make to my website and create those graphics so that I could share during launch week and on launch day. So that was something major that I did. All of that I did beforehand. And then came launch week. And during launch week, I was doing last minute things that I didn't finish. So more photos, really getting my website up to par, and posting each day on Instagram. So all of the stuff that I did, I planned and executed mostly during launch week, but I did talk about my book beforehand, and I did make sales from the very first day up until my launch day. Now, it was really strong when I very first posted, like the very first couple of days, and then I would have sporadic sales throughout. And then on launch day, in the day before, I had more sales. I find that whenever I talk about my book, if I'm talking about it and pointing people to the sales page, to the page on Amazon, then that is when I'm going to get sales. If I'm not talking about it, people aren't really thinking, oh, I need to go and buy Amanda's book. So that is something that has always been the case whenever I've sold anything, whether it's a book or it's a service or it's a course. Anything that I've sold in the past has always been that way. I have to talk about it in order for people to remember to go and buy. So the more you talk about it, probably the better things will go. So if you're nervous about sharing your book, the one thing that I do recommend is to remember that you're sharing. Try not to make things personal when you're marketing. That's when you kind of take your author hat off and you're moving beyond being an author and into the role of being a marketer of your book. And when you do that, if you just think about this is a good book. I like this book and I want to share with people who also love to read. I find that that kind of takes some of the pressure off and it makes it more conversational and it makes it less stressful when you're talking about your own book because you're looking at it more as this is how I would share any book that I love. If I read a book and I thought it was awesome and I want other people to think that it's awesome, I am just going to chat about it. And that's the way that I did it myself. So that would be what I would recommend to you to do during your pre-sale and launch. Now I wanted to chat quickly about what I would do differently next time. So the next time I launch something, it's going to be the next book or episode in this series. So something that I need to do is still focus on selling this first book or episode. I don't want people to think like, oh, this is another new book. It's not, they're connected. So I need to continue to work on growing my readership for this first book. So that means figuring out different tactics or different ways that I can share my book in different places. And that means trying new things and experimenting and looking at what works well and what doesn't. So that's something that is just general when you're doing sales in general. But there are some things that I would want to change no matter what book that I'm going to sell next. The first thing that I would change is I would try more things than what I did during this pre-sale campaign and book launch. I didn't put too many things on my list of what to do and what to try because it's the first. If you don't have a very large audience or very large readership, if you do a million things and you don't have anybody there to kind of listen and evaluate whether or not they want to buy your book, then you're kind of just speaking out to the void and making yourself tired. So that's not something I wanted to do. Now I have about 1,000 people who follow me on Instagram, and you can always bet that not everybody is going to buy. Probably like a couple percent of the people who follow you might buy. So I had a couple of, well, I had 1,000 people on Instagram and about 1,400 people on Facebook. And I have my YouTube channel here of almost 100. And, that's it. So when you really think about, and I have a small email list, but my email list, most of those people actually purchased already during my Indiegogo campaign. So as you can tell, I had people who purchased already with my email list. So I couldn't really sell anything to them again because I still have the same book that I'm selling. But my Instagram and Facebook accounts, that's where I would have the most sales. So that's what I focused on during the sale. Next time, I hope to have a larger amount of people that I can market it to. So my job right now is to focus on growing people who follow me through my blog, through YouTube, through my social media channels. As I'm focusing on that, then I can grow my readership. I also may grow my readership through people looking and searching for my book on retailers. Getting more people on my email list, that is one of the top priorities. So thinking about ways to get people to join is something that I'm focused on and working on right now. I will have more about that coming up soon. But basically, the main thing that I feel I need to focus on before my next book launch, before my next pre-sale campaign, is growing my list of people, growing my social media channels, and growing here on YouTube. So if I can do those things, then I will have more people to market to, right? That's just how it works. So I know that not everybody will buy, but the more people who I attract to my author brand, the more chance I have at people seeing my book, people seeing my next launch, and people purchasing. So that is number one of what I need to consider and what I will do during my next campaign is keep growing as much as possible. So something that I wanted to do this time that I actually didn't get to was a blog tour. Something that I thought would be cool to do. My editor, she just participated in a blog tour. I don't know how it went for her. I will check in with her and see, but I thought that would be really cool. It's not too expensive depending on who you have helping you organize the blog tour. So I thought that that would be a great way for me to get my book in front of new readers. So it's definitely something that I'm going to do again, or for the first time since I didn't do it, but it's something that I will do during my next launch. The other thing that I feel that I didn't do was I didn't really utilize YouTube enough to have, maybe like a live thing where I could invite my readers or I could invite people. I didn't do anything like that because again, this channel is small at this point in time. It's growing, but I didn't want to put too much effort into it where I was going to burn out. I have experienced burnout and it's a terrible thing to go through and a terrible thing to bounce back from. So that was primarily why I didn't do as many things as I could have. But next launch, of course, I'm going to add in a few more things while I'm doing it because I believe that as you're growing, your launches and your pre-sale campaigns and everything will grow with you. So that is why this time I didn't do it and why next time I will. The last thing that I would really do differently, for the next pre-sale campaign and the next launch, I would speak about my book more. I think that in general, I don't talk about my products and services and things that I have on sale enough, even though it feels like I'm being super annoying when I'm doing it. It's really not. People know that you're an author, they know that you have a book that you're trying to sell. You can go overboard and only talk about your book and only, mention that you have a sale going on or mention that you're in the middle of a marketing campaign. You can go overboard with that. But more often than not, I find that I don't talk about it enough. I don't show up enough. So I would try to do more than I did this time. And that's just in general. I think that is just what happens with most people is we feel like we're talking about our sales and we feel like we're talking about our book or service or whatever too much. And we're afraid that we're going to annoy people. And that's usually not true. So I would definitely talk about it more, maybe share more behind the scenes because that's fun for me to share. And I think it's also fun for other people to see, especially if they're other authors. So I would definitely do that next time. So there are a couple of questions that you can ask yourself when your sale is over. And this, I think, is what is helping me and what can help you as you grow as an author. The first question is, would I change anything now that my pre-sales campaign is over? So this is that what would I do differently question. How would I change what I did? And you don't have to completely scrap everything that you do after your first sales campaign. You just have to look at and evaluate the things that you liked, the things that went well, the things that you think will help you to continue to do in the future. So that's number one. And number two is how will I use what I've learned to move into the next campaign? So there are things that you will learn. There's nothing that is a failure when you're doing marketing. Everything is a learning opportunity. So if you take the time to kind of write notes, think about how things went, think about, what went well, you can learn from those things, even your mistakes. And next time, you can do better than the first time. So, those are 2 questions for you to ponder as you finish your first sales campaign, as you finish your first launch, and move into the next one. So, that is all that I have for you. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you gained something from it. If you have questions, please let me know in the comment section below, because I would love to try to help you out in the future. I would love to talk about this more. I love marketing on the internet. I have a master's degree in it, although it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm great at doing it for myself, but it's something that I really do love to do. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up so that I know that you like this and I can make more videos like this in the future. And if you want to stick around, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.